Chapter 141. After his death, 2. Kashmir obtained a nameless pass. It was an object required to enter Samel City, where the main base of Nameless was located. Going to the city without the Nameless Pass was suicide. However, possessing the Nameless Pass didn't guarantee safety in Samel. The city was more dangerous than an unprotected area like the Black Sea, the sacred place for all assassins. There were no common folk in Samel City. Everyone residing there were cadets aiming to become a part of Nameless. The entire city was essentially a training ground, which meant that assassin training was constantly in session. However, apart from normal training, cadets were allowed to assassinate within the grounds, and protecting the visitors wasn't the higher-ups' duty. Hence, using a visitor for assassin training was no problem. Going there with the Nameless Pass basically means that I will follow their ways. On the other hand, going without the Nameless Pass meant they were not a visitor but an enemy. A visitor would still survive assassination attempts from cadets and barely return. However, if an enemy successfully escapes, they'd be left on Nameless hit list and live the rest of their life in threat of murder. Not many could even think of survival after getting on the list. Jean lay on the sofa, playing with the Nameless Pass. Where elder sister Yona is. Going to see her wouldn't violate the rules of being a provisional flag bearer either. Yona was not in the Garden of Swords. She wasn't acting as a Runcandle affiliate, but as one of Nameless executioners. Additionally, even if he met her, Jean would face no punishment from the clan. After regressing, he wanted to visit Nameless before 1799. Leaving now was a little early, however. The Nameless cadets' assassination attempts were hard for even 7-star knights to deal with. I was going to go when their assassinations have become laughable. But if I meet Kazan again, or meet another poison master, then I can't do anything. Jean intended to visit Samel City because of poison. There are too many poisons that my Runcandle-blessed body can't handle. He remembered all of the moments he was at death's doorstep. The time he met the White Wolf tribe warrior Quasito Truca in his first mission, when he fought Andre Zipfel, when he faced the Zipfel magicians in the Kalin ruins, among others. Yet, the most dangerous encounter was when he fought Beriz and Kazan. When he got hit by Kazan's poison, he would have definitely died if it weren't for Prince Laika. Jean contemplated after Taemun's death. Kazan will continue to pursue me, and besides him, there'll be many who will try to kill me with poison. Even after I return to the main house, everyone affiliated with Nameless increased their poison resistance through training. Even the cadets in Samel had enough resistance against mid-tier poisons. Those who officially become a Nameless assassin would have achieved significant resistance to deadly poisons. However, Jean didn't want only that. He already had that resistance since he was born. The 1000-poison antidote. I have to obtain it. An antidote passed down to the best executioners of Nameless. Those who drank it got one step closer to absolute resistance. Absolute resistance wasn't recorded in history, but it seemed to be a domain only few had achieved. The first patriarch of Runcandle, Timar. The current patriarch, Siren. The first leader of Nameless, Korin. Obviously, it wasn't something that Jean could just get. It was an item that was offered only to those that the leader of Nameless approved. As the greatest executioners of Nameless. But in my past life and drank it, around 1799. If the events unraveled the same way as in Jin's past life, and would drink the 1000-poison antidote in 3 years. Gifted to her by Yona. At the time, elder sister Yona became the greatest assassin of Nameless in the shortest time in history. In fact, she already had a body close to absolute resistance since birth, so she didn't really need it. As such, Yona offered the antidote to the clan. Nameless leader was infuriated by it, but he stayed quiet due to 2 reasons. Firstly, his concern for Yona was no different than for his own children. Secondly, Nameless would fall the moment it retaliated against the Runcandle clan. Instead, the organization's leader complained to the Runcandles and kept Yona in the organization even after her contract expired. It would be better for her to be there anyways. Well, and drank it back then. But this time I'll drink it. Jean felt that and was definitely on Joshua's side, and he planned on ruining everything good for his enemies. from stealing the benefits that they reaped to magnifying the harms towards them. He would slowly but surely have his revenge that way. ***** Translator. J. Proofreader. Yukitokata ****. The deciphering of the Tome of Overload was complete. Ugh, finally. It's over, damn. Come over here and give me your back. Thanks. One by one, Muraken cast the characters onto Jin's back while muttering some words. Jin felt that his understanding of overload spells rapidly increased every time a rune character was cast on his back. Overload Reflection and Overload Vortex among other normal extreme overload spells, as well as an ultimate overload spell called Heavenly Defiance. Satisfied, Jin burst into laughter, and Muraken shrugged. You like it that much? I like this aspect of magic. I can't master decisive killing moves of the sword through rune character decoding. It's also the downside of magic. If you don't have the rune characters, sometimes you can never master the magic. That's why I don't use photon cannon. Well, I don't need that to be strong anyway. I feel like I got some good weapons after photon cannon. I saw them while deciphering, and they're pretty useless spells. If you master the Heavenly Defiance spell or something, you'll dominate. Even a herd of 7 stars. Heavenly Defiance was essentially a massive overload vortex in the sky. It sucked mana incomparably more than the overload vortex that was only on the caster's hand. Moreover, it shattered the basic rule of overload. Even if the opponent was of higher mana level, the user could still induce a mana overload. If Kittard had unleashed a Heavenly Defiance instead of a regular overload vortex, he would have been difficult to defeat even with the fountain of mana in hand. I kinda stressed the barrier on the mirror to get this magic, so it has to be worth something. My god, you think a seal from Sodaret's Prime would loosen just because of a 9-star magician? Use that thing more comfortably. Still, it doesn't feel right. If the seal breaks, the world ends. I have to use these as a last resort. And if I just rely on the mirror, my growth will only be delayed. Good point. Muraken responded boringly, but he was genuinely astonished. He should have realized how great the infinite mana pool is when he killed Kittard, but this kid isn't falling for the temptations of comfort. In his 3,000 years of activity, he had seen many geniuses who ruined their lives due to cutting corners. Getting stronger efficiently was important, but there was no definitive easy way to get stronger. Anyways, why don't you try it out? Heavenly Defiance? Yeah. Wait a moment. Let me release some spiritual energy. It'll take time to cast anyway since you're new to it. It was a 9 stars ultimate spell. Plus, you lack the mana, and we're indoors, you crazy kid. It's spacious enough. I'm starting. Jin closed his eyes and started to cast. Muraken quickly covered his body with spirit energy. Since he also had some mana, he had to prevent himself from being affected by the massive mana vacuum. Huhush! Kaong! The mana that emerged from Jin's hand began to form a massive circular shape on the ceiling, and it took approximately 15 seconds to cover the entire surface. After he finished his cast, the mana spun quickly, and the room began to rumble. Oh! Lord Jithiyure! The moment Muraken looked up at the Heavenly Defiance, Enya entered the room. Exposed to the spell, foam began emerging from her mouth. Shit! Jin immediately cancelled his spell and ran over to Enya. Muraken pointed at him and laughed as the young run candle helped Enya up. Are you okay, Enya? I'm sorry, I didn't know you were nearby. Enya flicked her thumb up with sparkling eyes. It's the best. Huh. It's the best. Just now. Crazy cool. It was hard to tell if it was the Heavenly Defiance or the current situation that she found cool. Nevertheless, Jin was relieved that Enya wasn't badly hurt. Phew, that's a relief. If you had gotten hurt. Wait. Stay like this for a sec. No, forever. I feel like I succeeded in life. Ack. Quicantle smacked the back of Enya's neck, causing her to lose consciousness. Common sight. Shit. You let her play with you? My goodness. I told her not to do so no matter how much she loved you. At that point, Muraken was rolling on the floor, laughing like a hyena. Jin explained the situation to Quicantle. This is my fault, Miss Quicantle. I will apologize to Miss Enya when she wakes up. An apology? No need. Enya needs to get into her right mind. Anyways, I heard you're gonna Samel City where Nameless is, right? To get the 1,000 poison antidote. Yes. I want to leave by the day after tomorrow. Do you know what kind of place that is? I do. The entire city is basically a massive training ground, and even visitors aren't free from the threat of assassination. At your level, I'm sure you're capable of holding off the Nameless cadets. However, as you survive longer and longer, you will encounter stronger assassins. The best will come if you defeat them too. Oh, I've never heard of that. Of course you haven't. Because anyone who escapes with that kind of knowledge would probably die knowing since they retain knowledge regarding Nameless and could potentially spread it. Usually, they die before encountering the best executioner or they'd return after finishing their business. During Quicantle's era, Nameless was a famous assassin organization. And among her allies, she was the most knowledgeable about Nameless. Even your sister can't stand a chance against the real assassins of Nameless. So, when you feel like you've been pushed into a corner, show them this. Then you might just live. Chapter 142. Nameless. 1. Jean boarded himself on a carriage to Samel. It had been 4 days since he left Taiken. At Samel's location, the southern region of the Khan Kingdom, it was already autumn. A wind carrying the good autumn atmosphere lightly shook Jin's hair as he leaned against the windowsill. In the midst of the unbelievably peaceful moment on the way to an assassin's cove, Jean remembered Gilly's unhappiness right before he left. It's your birthday soon, and I'm so disappointed that I won't be able to celebrate with you if you leave now. Young master, you're definitely making great achievements as a provisional flag bearer. But please make sure to allocate time for some leisure. After seeing Luna and Taemyun, Jean thought about Gilly a lot more. I should be nice to her. On that note, I don't know much about her either. Luna and Taemyun were a different case. Taemyun never spoke about her past since Luna bore no curiosity. Gilly was the opposite. From his past life to the current, whenever Jean asked about her past, Gilly would either avoid the question or flat out ignore it. I heard that she was the smartest member of the McRollan clan in history, and I don't even know why she became my guardian. The McRollans, one of the clans loyal to the Runcandles. They were a famous martial arts clan that was a prick in the finger for the Huphester Alliance. Gilly was the youngest daughter of such a clan. Why would such a person like that become a Runcandle nanny? Jean had heard that question even in his past life. At some point, he wanted to send a person to find out why, but he knew that it wouldn't be very respectful towards Gilly. She'll tell me soon enough. It was just that she didn't have the chance in my past life. When I get back, maybe we'll go on a vacation. Thump, thump, thump. The carriage continued forward. Organizing his thoughts, Jean looked out the window and at the coachman. For someone steering a carriage, he's too young. His lower body is well built too. A normal coachman would decline any request to Samel City regardless of the pay. Jean had been rejected at least 5 times before he got someone to take the job, which was why he speculated that the coachman was a nameless cadet. Hey! Yes, sir? How long until we arrive? About 2 more hours. Is this the right path? Yes, it is. Don't worry, and take a nap. People still live in Samel City, so coachmen like me go there every now and then. Verifying his claim, Jean nodded. He is a cadet. If he were a real nameless assassin, he wouldn't have used these kinds of tricks. Every inhabitant of the city was either an assassin or an assassin cadet. However, not all of them were the top-tier assassins that lived up to Nameless. Amongst the cadets, there always had to be more gravel than gems. I'll only be able to see nameless assassins once I actually arrive in the city, and this coachman won't attack me until we get there. Maybe. As he expected, nothing much happened in the next 2 hours. Jean arrived at the entrance of Samel City at approximately 2 in the afternoon. At first glance, it looks like a regular city. Well, the entrance looks like it belongs to one, at least. A normal pathway led to the heart of the city, and 2 guards stood at each side of the not-so-high gate. If he were to offer something different, the guards wore white fabric clothing and didn't hold any weapons. They didn't need to look threatening, since no human would intrude upon Samel City without intention. The white color was a symbol of nameless. Everyone in the city, from cadets to the best executioners, all wore the same white clothes. The only exception were the visitors. "Stop your carriage." The guard spoke, and the coachman pulled on the reins. Jean got out of the carriage and immediately pulled out the nameless pass. The guards exchanged glances with each other. "What's your reason for coming to Samel City?" They didn't ask him who he was or where he was from. Their tone wasn't threatening either. "Just for experience. It'll be a fun experience. Enter. You may retrieve your pass when you leave. I have something to ask before I step foot into the city." "What is it?" "Do the rules of Nameless apply after you receive the pass, or only when you enter the city?" "That's SHHHK. Before the guard could finish answering, a dagger flew towards Jin's back. Jean, who had his senses heightened, quickly dodged it. Definitely the coachman. With his momentum, Jean threw himself towards the coachman, who was drawing another dagger, and kicked his thigh. Crack! The sound of bone breaking resounded after Jean came into contact. He then swung his elbow towards the coachman's chin. The man fell to the ground, and Jean shook his head. "I guess it's the former. Will you guys attack too?" With eyes widened, the guards shook their heads. "No, we are mastering assassination, not martial arts. The moment you destroyed that fellow, we already failed. Enter." "Thanks. And this fellow will be kicked out, correct? Since he attempted murder without wearing the proper attire and failed. You know our rules well. It isn't a well-concealed secret, so it's nothing incredible. Tell him to not be so disappointed. Seeing as he was clearly inept during our ride, I think this job isn't fit for him. Maybe he can become a real coachman instead." Ting! Jean flicked a gold coin towards the fainted man. The man would be very disappointed, but Jean felt that he actually saved his life. After all, a pathetic one like him would only face death in Samel City. And tell him that this is for the ride. Jean trotted past the entrance and into the city. The guards glanced at his back. An interesting and merciful fellow made a visit. Jean could only be astonished as he walked in. Whoa! Before he left, the seven-colored peacock gave him some information. Contrary to the views and beliefs of people, Samel was a quiet and beautiful city. The roads didn't have a single speck of dirt or mud, and each building was spaced evenly and perfectly. They looked as if they were new. Each and every person who wore the nameless uniform remained quiet. They didn't even dare to glance at the visitor. Everything white glimmered in the afternoon sun. "It's more beautiful than I imagined." Goosebumps rose on the back of his neck. This beauty hid blood. The reason as to why Nameless symbol was the color white was because the assassins were confident that they could execute their targets without staining their uniforms. Those who managed to make progress in this quiet city, without being caught by anyone, would then earn the privilege to live in the Nameless manner. Visitors are merely special training dummies. Otherwise, they kill each other day by day. At first glance, the cadets ranged from teenagers to young adults to middle-aged people. There were even children, 4 or 5 years younger than Jean. And among them, a talented one definitely existed. However, it was rare for one to ever show mercy. Age, experience, origin, none of that mattered here. Every cadet's goal was to kill others, climb the cadet ranks, and head to the Nameless manor. No matter what angle you look at it, this place is worse than the Runcandle clan. Seeing the children in this brutal city, Jean conjured an image of his sister, Yona Runcandle. Elder sister Yona said that she was sent here at the age of 12. Realizing Yona's talents very early, Siren debated whether to send her to the Hidden Palace or Samel City. Both were places to escape the world powers and places to colonize. Between the two, Siren wanted the Hidden Palace more. However, he sent his youngest daughter to Nameless for one reason. At the Hidden Palace, Cirrus was already chosen to be the successor, but there wasn't anyone yet for Nameless. Even until now, when Yona was already 23 years old. Which was why Jean could count the number of times he saw Yona with his hands. In my past life, she came back and became an assassin for the clan. It was far from an honorable flag bearer. She became an unofficial flag-bearer who had to hide her presence at all times. Although she had some freedom in the Garden of Swords, Yona normally lived in hiding and often erased her presence. The reason was unknown. Whether it was due to her personality or she thought her presence brought misfortune. And seeing her live like that, Jean felt empathy. Yona wouldn't know, but I was also pushed to a corner and suffocated. Though the treatment between us were polar opposites. It was an opportunity for him to have a nice talk with her, along with the request to have the 1,000 poison antidote. Jean walked along the path as he smiled bitterly. First, he needed to find a room to reside in. Samel was a moderate-sized city. Due to the lack of visitors, there weren't many inns. However, Jean didn't think of going to an inn. An inn has a high risk of assassination. I won't last long tracking the inn owner, workers, and other guests. He already experienced how painful that was at the Cosmos Arena. He barely survived even from inexperienced pirates. It's better to choose a room from an average cadet. Peons like the coachman wouldn't attack Jean out of fear. Instead, Jin's life would be threatened by the cadet homeowner. I have to choose wisely. A cadet who thinks they could kill me anytime, but never will. Asterisk 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 translator. J. Proofreader. Yukitokata asterisk asterisk asterisk. Meanwhile, at a dock in the central region of the Khan Kingdom, Baradin and Dante were tracking down Jean after the Zipfel banquet. Hey you. Yeah you. Come help me for a second. Have you seen someone like this? Ahem. Have you seen someone like this? If so, I will be very thankful. Using Heron's political power, they dug through all of the recent transfer gate usage records, found 45 instances of Jean Grey, and met 10 different people who bore the same name. It would be easier if the Hyran and Zipfel clans worked together, but that would destroy the meaning of a secret trip and the opportunity for the three to gather. The two made that decision. We are certain that this Jean Grey came here as well. But what if the Jean Grey in the Khan Kingdom isn't the one we're looking for? What do you think we'll do? Go to the next town over? That's what. At least one of the 45 must be him. Else we'll have to start all over again. A commitment that no one else would willingly make. Chapter 143. Nameless. 2. You want to borrow a room? That's right. The man looked down at Jean with an expressionless face. A man who easily towered over 2 meters with a scary face. For the other cadets, the pure white uniform at least made them look nicer, but not for this man. He resembled a martial artist or a mercenary instructor who used an axe, more than an assassin. While scouring the streets until sundown, Jean chose this man, and his standards were his footsteps. An assassin was a beginner if Jean could hear their footsteps without the need to focus, intermediate if he needed to focus a little, and advanced if he couldn't hear them at all. As for those who required the utmost focus to detect, they would easily go to the nameless manor. With that in mind, Jean determined this man to be an intermediate cadet. After facing the coachman and the guards, beginners were off the list, and confronting an advanced assassin from the start was a little too much. Wouldn't it be better to stay at an inn? I don't like it because there are many customers at night. I'll pay more than enough for each night, so please. I feel very offended. The man's eyes narrowed. Not because Jean just asked for a room out of the blue, but because the man interpreted the request as a tease. Something along the lines of, you can't kill me. Seeing that you entered with the nameless pass, you must be an offspring of a clan, and you must have incredible skills for your age. I understand that you're confident, but this is Samel City. There is no such thing as a fair fight. I know well about that, so I avoided going to an inn. If you will not offer your room, I'll search for someone else. I'll let you in. I won't take any payments, though I may take your life instead. Don't forget that this is all on you. Thank you. After a 5-minute walk, they arrived at a 2-story residence. Jean chose to use a relatively small room on the 2nd floor. As soon as he entered, he asked for dinner. Don't worry about your food being poisoned. I never thought of you as that much of a beginner. Thanks for the meal. An efficient meal with some meat, eggs, and vegetables. Very fresh produce, as the cadet said. Jean quickly finished his plate before the man and stared at him. Even if he's an intermediate, I should never lower my guard around him. Jean looked carefree, but it would be a lie if he said he wasn't nervous. The man could release poisonous gas under the table, go for Jin's throat with the fork, or throw the poison needles hidden in his sleeve. Anything could happen if Jean lowered his guard. Even though he possessed better physical skills, he had to think of all the possibilities against a trained assassin. 2 needles in his sleeve, and he's always keeping the middle of his mouth empty while he chews, so he has needles or a poison flask in there. However, I can't only check on those. His knowledge of assassins' basic principles from his cadet days helped him. When against assassins, you must think of them as illusionists or scammers, young master. If the opponent's eyes give away that they saw a hidden weapon, they'll use another unexpected hidden card. It was something the beginner class instructor told him. Also, before Jean left for Samel City, his companions provided advice that often applied. Especially Quicantle, who knew well about Nameless, offered many points of advice which Jean constantly thought about. There is one thing you need to keep an eye on when in Samel. When a door suddenly opens, never take your eyes off what you're looking at. The moment you instinctively turn and look, it'll be the end of your life. Kriya Ake. How could he have such great teachers and companions? Thankfully, even when the front door opened, Jean could keep an eye on the man. What is this kid? He knew that the door was going to open. On the other hand, the assassin expected Jean to turn his head. He planned to suffocate Jean with the tablecloth, which was covered in chloroform, while he was looking away. However, he couldn't execute it. Even after 3 seconds since the door opened, Jean maintained his upright position. Squeak, squeak. The open door swayed and made a squeaking sound. Nobody came through the door. Just some evening wind blew past the 2 inhabitants. It's their special training method. Instructors would dress as cadets, open doors and walk past, especially for houses with visitors. It's a principle of the assassins to catch an opportune moment by staying alert 24/7. Had Jean come to Samel without hearing this from Quicantle, his visit would have been more fatal than expected. For a while, Jean stared at the man. Should I close it? Jean asked cluelessly, and the man nodded whilst suppressing his surprise. He's not an easy kid. He's an unnerving one. Maybe he's from an elite clan. That would be more dangerous for me than him. I'll observe him for a while and take the opportunity. I shouldn't take him lightly. If he forced an attack on Jean, the nameless instructor who opened the door would kick him out immediately. Because that was not the way of Nameless. May I go rest upstairs? Do as you wish. On the 2nd floor, Jean started to investigate his surroundings. He took note of how many possible paths external intruders could take, whether there were any traps or assassins in position. He didn't simply scan and check for 1 or 2 things. There's nothing that could pose a problem on the 2nd floor. 1 window limits the possibility of invasion, and even a slightly large physique would prevent such entry. No special contraptions on the ceiling, floor, or walls either. After finishing the hour-long inspection, Jean lay on the bed and thought about the instructor that opened the door while he ate dinner. Nameless is beyond comprehension. Are you telling me that all of the instructors are on that level? How can a person move like a ghost like that? While he was eating, Jean had his senses heightened, enough to detect even the movement of dust. He also expected that his concentration would be marred by the door suddenly opening. Despite all that, he wasn't able to detect the instructor's footsteps. It was as if nobody turned the doorknob and the door just opened on its own. Even Jean couldn't replicate such ghostliness with his spiritual energy. That instructor could kill me whenever they want, even if this wasn't Samel and it was my room in Tychon. Even if all of my companions guarded my room, my survival wouldn't be guaranteed. Goosebumps crawled up his spine. I shouldn't be proud of identifying an intermediate cadet's schemes. If I encounter an instructor-level assassin, I'll be dead before I can even show them what Miss Quicantle gave me. He finally started to feel what kind of place he got into. However, there were still many things he didn't know about, and if they remained unknown to him, Jean, who had gone through so many conflicts, would fall to the ground in despair. I think that's him, isn't it? Is it? Sitting upside down on the ceiling was a woman who had been watching Jean this entire time. Even while Jean inspected the second floor, she stayed right on his tail. And the moment Jean sat on his bed, she took position on the ceiling. The woman had been observing Jean while maintaining a half-step distance for about an hour. Is it him? Is it not? Is it? Air. Should I just ask? No. If it isn't him, I have to kill him. He definitely looks like him, though. Jean sighed and unsheathed Bradamanti to clean it, and the woman smiled with glittering eyes. Her name was Yona Runcandle, the best executioner of Nameless, Jin's sister, and the instructor who opened the door. It's Bradamanti. It is the youngest. Wow. Nice to see you again. Unable to suppress her happiness, she clapped. Clapping? Jean instinctively stood and took a defensive stance. He simultaneously looked towards the source of the sound, the ceiling. At that moment, Yona already repositioned herself behind Jean again. Phew, that was close. As if she were weightless, the bedding that she stood on didn't have a single wrinkle. Jean quickly spun in place to analyze his surroundings, but like a shadow, Yona stuck right behind Jean. My youngest brother. Couldn't you just act like you didn't hear it? The current leader of Nameless didn't favor her for nothing. Yona's abilities were something that even the leader couldn't do. Am I hearing things? What was it? What the hell was it? I'm sure I heard a clapping sound on the ceiling. Am I hearing things because I'm so sensitive? I can't even use magic or spiritual energy. Contrary to Yona, Jean was going crazy. He had been dripping cold sweat for an hour, but he still couldn't identify what the sound was. Is it the instructor from before? No, even an instructor can't conceal themselves in this space. Ultimately, Jean concluded that he was hearing things. Otherwise, it would be an incomprehensible scenario. Phew! He slumped back onto the bed but still couldn't let go of his alertness. He wouldn't be sleeping tonight. You'll never be able to find me since you didn't open your mind's eye. But that's incredible. How much have you grown since the last time I saw you? Yona knew Jean to be a 5-star. However, seeing him in person, his aura was at least 7-star. That was incredible enough, but she didn't forget that he prevented all attempts of murder on the first floor. I'm certain even eldest sister Luna couldn't do that at your age. Well, she would just take no damage from poison needles or daggers and just counterattack, but she would never prevent such attacks from happening. Proud of her brother, she wanted to give Jean a big hug. Yet, after debating on whether she should reveal herself and praise the youngest, Yona shook her head. There's so much I want to tell you, T. Let's play a little more until the day you leave, shall we? Chapter 144. Nameless. 3. 4 days had passed. Every day after waking up, Jean ate breakfast with the man, roamed the streets, returned by sunset, and ate dinner. The carefree days made him feel like he came to a remote vacation spot instead of Samel. Whenever he roamed the streets or resided in the house with the man, there wasn't a single assassination attempt. Jin's days were very peaceful. The place he resided in was an intermediate cadet's home. The cadets in the streets were worse than his landlord. The fact that he came back alive from the house reminded those below that Jean was not someone to mess with. No one's going for me after the first day. Feels a little weird. Flip. Flip. Leaning on a tree, Jean flipped through an encyclopedia about different poisons and poisonous plants from Samel's library. As much as a visitor could borrow it, it didn't have much information in it. However, since Jean didn't know much about poisons, he was very intrigued. A pair of eyes hiding behind a tree across from him watched him intently. Out of everyone in the family, he seems to like books. Yona was very busy, supervising her younger brother. Aside from the fact that she hadn't seen him in a long time, Yona had her own reason to watch him. Jin's skill level. She had to identify that in order to send assassins at his level. And based on her observations, his skills were unbelievable for a 16-year-old. Not only is his aura spectacular, but his ability to detect danger is also remarkable. Like a veteran who survived death multiple times. Even for a Runcandle, that much experience was rare. Usually, if they didn't push themselves on the verge of death because they were a Runcandle, then experiencing life or death situations was hard. He would have overcome those situations at least once or twice at the age of 16. What kind of life did this kid live through? Just as Yona said, pureblood run candles usually went through similar experiences during their flag-bearer conquests. However, she felt that the youngest didn't just experience it once or twice. She wasn't wrong. In fact, Jean had overcome more challenges and hardships than any other run candle. Although Yona didn't know it, Jean had the experience of someone who had lived until their mid-40s, including his past life. And since he was a weakling in his past life, he had to live through many more things the hard way. Very interesting. Intermediate or intermediate advanced wouldn't be enough. I should send some advanced assassin groups. Yona lightly giggled and left the forest. Jean looked at where she was last. And then he thought to himself, something was over there again. It's been so many days since I've started sensing these. Ever since the clapping sound. I think I'm going crazy. Asterisk 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 translator. J. Proofreader. Yukid Okada asterisk asterisk asterisk. Can't you leave my house now? The next evening, the intermediate cadet spoke in an exhausted voice right after serving dinner. Am I perhaps eating too much or disrupting your daily life? Jean asked with widened eyes, and the man shook his head. No, it's not that. Then why? The man sighed deeply. I gave up trying to assassinate you. At first I thought you were a fearless child. A child who grew up as an offspring of a clan only knowing the good side of the world. Something pathetic like that. And I was very wrong. I see. They awkwardly smiled at each other. But for 4 days I tried to find an opening. I couldn't get a single opportunity. For days. So I admit, I am not at a level to kill you. It would be right for me to leave after hearing that reason. But why give up without even trying? Failing an assassination attempt on a visitor causes deductions. Usually, I'm supposed to finish you off by the end of day 1, but you didn't offer any openings. And I'm about to be promoted anyway. Do I show sympathy? Jean thought for a second, but then just shrugged. It was a meaningful 4 days for me. I learned a lot by staying alert this entire time. I hope you learned something new as well. And for once, the man laughed out loud. Kuhaha. I didn't think you'd answer like that. I learned a lot too. My skill level stagnated for a while. But this experience really stimulated me. I give you my thanks. The man offered his hand. I'm not trying to kill you here. However, after you leave my house, I hope you get out of Samel safely. Jean grabbed his hand after pondering for a bit. I hope you become a nameless assassin and come work for me someday. I won't ask for your name, though I will return the hospitality. For the first time in the man's house, Jean had a comfortable meal. Immediately after, he packed his bags and left. It was a dark night with no moon or stars in sight. Now I don't feel bad about going to the inn. Even at the inn, the inexperienced insects wouldn't bug him. Thinking this, Jean started walking. However, not even 5 steps away from the house, he instinctively felt something and looked below his feet. This is a trap used to catch large beasts. If one stepped on the middle, a sharp steel trap would grip onto one's ankle. About 30 of those were scattered across Jin's path. When against assassins, you must think of them as illusionists or scammers, young master. If he didn't think of Garen Altamiro's advice again, Jean would have been caught by the traps. Above, Xing. Jean unsheathed Baradmant and looked at the roof of the house. Someone had their head peering over the side. An advanced cadet sent by Yona. The cadet bit on a long tube preparing to shoot. Poison dart. The traps were to slightly falter Jin's focus for a split second so that the blow dart could actually hit its target. The dart was shot before Bradamanti could be fully unsheathed. Thankfully, Jean could deflect it with the half-unsheathed sword. However, he couldn't counter it. The cadet then pulled on a string that was tied to all of the traps. The dozens of bear traps in the front yard all flew towards Jean. The steel mouth would bite into his skin and inject its poison the moment it touches him. Holy shit! The sight resembled a pack of alligators charging towards him. Clang! Cocklang! Kong! Jean fully unsheathed Bradamanti and deflected all of the traps, swinging the sword as fast as he could. As the blade left pale white afterimages, some of the traps remained on the blade. That was the cadet's goal. Should the assassination fail, the cadet planned to neutralize Jin's sword to buy time and escape. They already failed as soon as the dart was deflected, so the cadet had no intention of killing Jean with the traps. The cadet thought that Jean would get rid of the traps on his sword first, instead of chasing the culprit. They also wished the sword would break. You bastard! Yet there was no way some bear traps would scratch Bradamanti, a blade forged from 1,000-year-old steel. With the bear traps clinging onto his sword, Jean chose to jump onto the roof. The blade now resembled a bat more than a sword. Jean threw the metal stick towards the cadet. Wong! Bradamanti let out a ringing sound as it traveled through the air. Because of the traps, the blade couldn't cut anything. However, the massive stick hit the cadet's thigh and then fell to the ground. Clang! Jean jumped off the clay rooftop and onto the cadet, who lost balance. Gotcha! The two tangled together and fell on the roof. Jean immediately got on top of the cadet and wrapped his fist in aura, ready to strike his opponent's face. I admit failure, the cadet shouted in a frantic voice. What? I admit failure, my fellow. So please stop. You've won. Would you stop in my position? I won't kill you. Thank your cadet status. Crack. Jean struck the cadet regardless, and their nose and cheekbones flattened out. Blood splattered everywhere, yet Jean didn't stop. Until the cadet fainted. What a mess as soon as I left. He haphazardly cleaned the blood off his fist. There were 6 traps biting down on his sword, so he couldn't use it before he got rid of them. I should get rid of these. I'll need at least 3 minutes. Jean stopped his hand extending towards the traps and looked around. They were on the roof, so there was no place to hide the body. There were also many other spaces for other people to conceal themselves on the adjacent roofs. First, I need to move somewhere safe. Since this guy placed those traps, they knew I'd leave the house today. Jean concluded that the advanced cadet definitely heard the conversation he had with the intermediate cadet. He had mentioned that he would leave after dinner, and the advanced cadet chose to attempt the assassination then. That guy didn't backstab me. More so some higher-up ordered him or something. Or maybe, after evaluating my skill level, someone ordered to hunt me down. Right as he thought so, Fwy yayet, fwit, arrows flew towards him from both sides, and as expected, they were poison-tipped arrows. Jean could barely evade them, but he couldn't extrapolate the source due to more arrows flying towards him. Arrows continued to rain towards him, and he couldn't even deduce how many people were shooting. He had to get on the ground. He needed at least the building wall to block the arrows coming from one direction. Shit. I feel like there's something else waiting for me on the ground. However, he had no choice. If he didn't want to turn into a porcupine, he had to get on the ground. Jean gritted his teeth and jumped off the roof. Yona smiled, satisfied. Hee suffer a little, youngest brother. After being chased like this for a week, you'll awaken your mind's eye. It's already half open. If you don't survive and die, it'll be a little sad. But it can't be helped. Hmechem, Yona hummed a tune as Jean sprinted away. She truly wished for Jean to grow stronger. Chapter 145. Nameless. 4. The assassin's pursuit continued throughout the night and into the morning. Just as Jean said himself, the first advanced assassin, who blew poison darts at him, was merely the beginning. Right after Jean jumped from the roof, the streets filled with poisonous fumes. His vision marred by the gases, Jean got lost in the alleys. Whenever he paused to catch his breath, a blade would fly right past his face. Another flurry of arrows followed him as he escaped the alleys. Deflecting and dodging all of the projectiles, Jean thought he was dead when 3 advanced cadets ambushed him from the sewers. Not only that, when he finally found the inn, as soon as he opened the door, fumes began to leak out. And through the haze a dagger flew out. It was pretty surprising for Jean, but he couldn't do anything about the half a breath's worth of fumes that he inhaled. Pant, these crazy bastards. Jean escaped into the forest where he previously read his book. 2. He spat out a mix of saliva and blood before shaking his head. If it weren't for his body, he would be suffering from a fever and spitting. Blood clumps into red spit. Even though this is a little organized, it's too organized. I don't know who's sending all these people, but I'll find them and beat their ass. Kararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararararar with passion and fighting spirit. At the end of the forest, the sun began to rise. However, Jean couldn't be sure if the pursuit stopped by the morning. His face was covered in cold sweat, and his robe was ripped and torn everywhere like an old rag. Even so, he was surprised that he didn't have a single nick on his skin. Phew! After spending 5 minutes scouting the area, Jean leaned on a tree. He could never dream of knowing that Yona was on top of that tree. You're the best. Flap. Yona dropped a piece of paper and concealed herself. What's this? Jean instinctively caught the paper out of the air. Playtime resumes in the evening. At that moment, Jean was at his limit. He would have cut the tree down. Barely holding in his anger, Jean chuckled. Haha. I thought it'd be the best of the best executioners of Nameless, but it was just Elder Sister Yona. Well, that's a little better. If I survive these attacks, I can more righteously and bluntly ask for the 1,000 poison antidote. Since Yona herself sent the message, Jean relaxed for the afternoon. After locking the inn door and taking a deep nap, the fatigue dissipated. The minuscule amount of poisonous fumes got cleansed. Everything left his system as he breathed during his sleep. This would never happen if the poison were from a more trained Nameless assassin. Now that I think about it, Elder Sister and received the 1,000 poison antidote because she entertained Elder Sister Yona for a while. Well, they played a little differently though, and very annoyingly approached Yona then. She targeted Yona's heart that had a unique personality and often faced loneliness. At first, Yona didn't trust her too much. But slowly and surely, her heart opened and obtained the potion. I loved you so much for so long, and you won't do anything for me? And obtained the potion by forcing Yona to feel remorse. After her acquisition, she distanced herself from Yona, saying that she couldn't deal with her personality. Every sibling knew that. Elder Sister Yona's depression at the main house had many reasons, but her scars and bruises from Elder Sister and weren't small. Even I knew at such a young age. Of course, Jean had no intention of playing with Yona to achieve his goal. Splish, splash. Before coming into his room, he quickly washed his face in water that he gathered in a bowl. He tied his bangs so it wouldn't hang over. Then, he shoddily sewed the holes in his robe and examined his equipment. It'll begin as soon as I open the door. If I open it without care, it'll be like a bee's nest. Was it because he already experienced it the previous night? He felt like he could verse more skillful assassins. He got used to an entire city going for his head. But I won't be wasting time like yesterday. Be thankful that I'm only using my sword, you cadets. Jean thought that he could resist as many cadets if he used magic or spiritual energy. He was handicapped this entire time. Kriawalk. Shoo. CRK. As expected, as soon as the door opened, the traps installed in front of the door activated. Poisonous darts flew towards Jean. He moved out of the doorway. Having already expected Jin's movement, the assassins in the hallway held their breaths to conceal their location. I have no intention of losing to your pace today. Boom! Jean wrapped the knob of his sword with aura and knocked down the door. The thin wooden door shattered, and a hole big enough for a man to pass through formed. I spared your asses yesterday, but starting now, you are risking your limbs trying to kill me, wholeheartedly. He let himself get chased because he didn't want to kill any cadets. Although he showed mercy the previous night, they had pushed Jean to the edge. Whether they were cadets or moving on orders, either way, they were trying to kill him. Jean darted out of the hole and lightly cut the waist of a cadet. Before he could hear a scream, Jean twisted the blade to deepen the wound. If you don't find a doctor soon, you'll be finished. The other cadets surrounded Jean and began throwing sharp projectiles. Deflecting them would be easy, but the most threatening in the swarm were the hooks. These hideous hooks, made with the talons of eagles woven together, clung onto anything it touched and never let go. And its tensional strength was off the charts. It didn't break at the swing of the sword covered in blue aura. Every time I see that, I feel like I'm being treated like some beast. First, because it didn't break easily, Jean didn't know what to do. It was the main cause of the tears in his robe. However, he didn't plan on falling for it twice. Something I can just stab and withdraw. Why did I think to just swing at it? Thinking of stabbing something flying at the speed of an arrow wasn't common. Ting, tighting. Jean began to lightly stab each grapple like quick jabs, and the cadets licked their lips. Unfortunately, they did not have sword skill or physical ability like that of Jean. The reflected grapples with the jaws open flew towards the cadets. Ear-splitting screams echoed. Ka-arg! Erk! The small hallway then filled with blood and bits of flesh. Jean walked on and over the cadets to head to the first floor. They're a little worse than the guys from yesterday, probably trying to elicit hubris or something. The ones on the first floor will probably be the special ones amongst the cadets. The best cadets who were 1 or 2 steps away from the nameless manor. Just as Jean expected, the assassins stationed on the first floor and outside the inn were very talented. I should never move in the trajectory they want me to go. I'll lose if I do. Wherever the attacks fly in, I shouldn't dodge them. Just charge through. Instead of being chased, make him chase. Jean presumed that the assassins would act upon that principle. If I destroy everything in my path, they'll naturally just follow me. Since they treated me like some giant beast, I'll return the favor. Slash. Crash. As soon as he arrived on the first floor, he shot blade crescents everywhere like a madman and bulldozed through the first floor. Every pole or wall he encountered, he burst through it. Of course, this was through all of the projectiles, but it was better than the day before. Once caught in a blade crescent, a head would be lost. Nobody gets startled. If he escapes the inn, then the squad on the roof will snipe him. The squadron leader signaled his thoughts, but not even 10 seconds later, his prediction was proven wrong. As soon as Jean burst out of the inn walls, his plan was to bulldoze through anything in sight, including cadets' residences and small shops. Oh, and my house. The Jean assassination squad couldn't register the situation, and the beginner cadets suffered great damages in their property. They attacked him first as an organization. Not just a cadet's assassination attempt, but a planned action with dozens of people involved. And Jean thought that was too much. Are these cadets resilient, or will my aura deplete? Or will the leader of Nameless take action? Let's see what happens, elder sister Yona. Every time another brick house collapsed, Jin's smile grew. ***** translator. J. Proofreader. Yukid Okada *****. Ha who? Jean slowly got exhausted. The aura on Bradamanti got significantly fainter, and his body felt heavy like steel. So, after the pursuit settled down, he hid himself in a restaurant and caught his breath. Shit, it seems the leader likes elder sister Yona more than I thought. At this point, Jean thought that the leader or one of the best executioners would come for him. Then, he could use Quicantel's present and reason his way out of the situation. However, it was Yona who sent the cadets to pursue him. The leader of Nameless would respect all of Yona's decisions. Even causing this much of a ruckus, Yona would just write a 100-page self-reflection and face no other punishment. Knowing this fact, Jean would be lying if he said he wasn't surprised. At this rate, the cadets will find out that my aura is weak, clench their teeth, and then give it their all. What should I do? Do I have to use magic or spiritual energy? Using Miss Quicantel's present now would be too premature and humiliating. After thinking for a while, Jin's eyes burned with anger. Hey, you guys hiding over there. Come out, before I bring you down with the ceiling. Seeing that you're shit at hiding your footsteps, it seems you guys aren't the ones who are out to kill me. If you leave, I'll let you live. The next moment, Jean was met with unexpected faces. Huh? What? Why are you guys coming out from there? The ones behind the pillar were Dante and Baradin, who were scratching their heads. Chapter 146. Nameless. 5. Hey Jean, Baradin waved his hand crazily with a big smile across his face. "Greetings, old friend." Dante grinned and tried to approach Jean. However, Jean held out his sword and stayed cautious. "I'm a little sensitive right now. I would like you to explain why you showed up at this location at this exact moment." Are you not glad to see us? I'd be a little glad to see you in a bar, but this isn't that." A little disappointed, Dante looked at the ground. Baradin grabbed Dante's shoulders and held him up. "Only a little glad? That's too harsh." Letting down both of his friends, Jean was startled. "Is that important right now?" "No, was I too harsh?" His conscience was confused. Thinking that it couldn't be helped, Jean lowered Bradamanti and sighed. "You wouldn't say that if you knew just how much we struggled to find you." "Exactly. I had to use my slush fund in order to obtain the nameless pass." Jean sighed. "All right then, go ahead and tell me how you found me and for what reason you came." So basically, Baradin rambled on about their journey to find Jean, about sifting through the usage history of all transfer gates in the Vermont Empire and finding 45 different Jean Greys, the days they spent tracking down each and every one, meeting 14 Jean Greys before finding the one they wanted. When we arrived in Central Con, I had a good feeling. So we sought every single coachman in the area since this was the place with Samuel. And you killed Kiddard not so long ago, so I just knew you'd be here. And our predictions were right. Do you now know how much we've been through? Listening to their story, Jin's head went blank. Fucking hell. What kind of tenacity is this? It was the first time he questioned someone's resilience. Yeah, I heard you loud and clear. Then what was your reason? The reason why we went looking for you? Yeah. Just 'cause we want to see you? Because the night at the arena was nostalgic? Don't you think we need not a major reason for us to see each other's faces once more? Yeah. That's plausible, all right? There doesn't need to be a reason. Then lastly, why come to Samuel and hide in the corner of a restaurant? Oh, that. I just knew that you were messing with Nameless. And I didn't want to get tied into that mess. We arrived 3 hours ago and were about to go look for you. But then the town got a little noisy, and after understanding the situation, you were destroying and terrorizing the city. And we were so hungry, we spent all our money to get the Nameless pass, so we don't have money to eat. Then your reason why you're at a restaurant is to fill your stomachs? Dante shook his head. We have no intention of eating for free. We were planning to ask you to pay. Coincidentally, you stumbled in on us. Yeah, not a single thought to steal food. You know that, right? We're not that kind of people. Silence ensued. Seeing the sauce on Dante's and Baradin's mouth, Jean smirked and chuckled. The two culprits then burst into laughter. I'll still pay for it. Jean took out a dozen gold coins and handed it to the two food robbers. Of course, we should pay the price. Then do the money's worth. Their grins disappeared and they looked at Jean. Money's worth? I'm saying let's beat those guys together. Baradin, watch your back. Ha! Slash. The cadets swarmed through a flurry of daggers. Clang. Jean bolted past Baradin and deflected the projectiles. Dante drew his sword and took a defensive stance. Did I almost die there? Wow, I guess this really is Samuel. You knew I was going to block it for you, so shut your trap and prepare some spells. They're about to release the fumes. Baradin grinned and began to gather mana in his hands. Jean was surprised at how fast he gathered inconceivable amounts of mana. And Jean could confirm that Baradin could multicast 3 spells at once. I saw a bit of it when he tried to heal Dante, but he really is multicasting 3. To cast 3 spells simultaneously meant that he could get out 3 times as much output from a static amount of mana. The mana in Baradin's hands slowed down into fire, wind, and ice elements. On top of that, I don't know what Dante did, but his blade got sharper. Starting to move, Dante showed more refined yet aggressive movement than when he met Jean at the arena. At Dante's current state, Jean would have to use either magic or spiritual energy in order to beat him. He did train there more years than Jean, but it was still hard to believe that he made that much progress in 3 months after their time at the arena. Dante, don't kill them. I didn't think of doing that anyway, Baradin. The attack of the advanced cadets continued, but compared to before, Jean fought them with comfort. Instead of thinking that I'm expending all of my own energy and using all of my skills, they need to think about these other guys. Revealing his magic and spiritual energy would be problematic, but if he used his alternative skills, even the advanced cadets wouldn't stand a chance. Hush! Fush! From Baradin's hands, a wind blew out the restaurant and took the poisonous fumes with it. Simultaneously, a trail of flames sped across the floor then spread outwards towards the cadets. Dante defended against the cadets who jumped through the windows. There's no end if we fight them here. Let's bulldoze out of here. Then what shall we do? It seems the entire city wants your head. Just do what I was doing before. Since you guys are with me more, cadets will come. Maybe a high-ranked executioner will come for us. We were watching from the sidelines because we didn't want to get involved. But now there's no point. Think of it as punishment for intruding with my private business. Ultimately, Dante and Baradin could only join the fight. However, they didn't really dislike it. When they first began their search, they had a feeling they'd be intertwined with some problems. Though the problem was a little bigger than they expected. ***** Translator. J. Proofreader. Yukitokata *****, sitting atop the nameless manor. Yona sighed. What the hell? What are those guys? Unable to hold in her anger, she threw a tantrum with a strange envy. Yona, what's wrong? A man walked over to her and lit a cigar. A pale white uniform, and a black belt that only one person of Nameless could wear. The leader of Nameless, Owl. I was having fun with my youngest brother, but some weird kids interfered and interrupted my plans. I'm so pissed, Leader Owl. And they seem to be close to him. I haven't even had a proper conversation with him. So you're throwing a tantrum? Yes. It's the first time I'm this mad. Touch that much? You wouldn't know. I was so glad to see him. I was gonna help him open his mind's eye. Those fuckers. Oh, and don't tell anyone that he's a provisional flag bearer. Yeah. I do know. Owl awkwardly shook his head. The successors of the Zipfel clan and Hyran clan. It's the first time I've seen Yona this mad. But she won't kill them, right? He thought too soon. I'm gonna kill them. Oh, Yona. You can't do that. Why not? I'll kill them. Jean came to me for the first time, and they ruined everything. Everything. A white-haired magician and a child with a sword. Their faces are already engraved in my brain. Do you really need to kill them? The entirety of Nameless may be put in a difficult spot. I can't let this slide. I yielded everything until now. I killed people I didn't want to kill, even when people came to visit the main house. Owl licked his lips bitterly. When the world powers had been moving ominously, Owl thought he evaded the fate of Nameless extinction after getting Yona to succeed him. If it weren't for her, this era or maybe the next would have been the last. That was Yona's presence in Samel. However, her personality was far from universal. Although she was 23, she had a very pure aspect of her. Putting pure into other words, she could make anything happen. And in her mind, important things and unimportant things could change quickly. She's dangerous. If she moves on her own, they may never get out alive. If I need to keep them safe, I either need to kill Yona or make her disabled. But I don't want to think of that. It wasn't because Owl was lacking compared to her. It was because Yona's prowess made her the most talented assassin in history. Born to assassinate. The second coming of the god of death. The Nameless executioners called her that. And a small population who knew about her called her a different name. The Chaotic Blade. Thankfully, Owl knew well about controlling her. Then how about we play a game, Yona? Go on. Instead of cadets, we send 3 executioners. If they die, you win. And if they survive, you lose. Of course, in Yona's position, she wouldn't gain anything. However, she fell deep into thought. Then the chance of Jean dying is very high. I don't want him to die. He plays along with me so well. And he's too precious. If you let them live, then I won't bat an eye. Your brother lives, and his companions live as well. I don't want that either. Itchem. She didn't think for long. Sure, let's do that game. But in addition, you can't intervene. If you help them in any way, don't worry about that. Hee. Then I'll see you later. I'll go pick the assassins. Yona flashed a big grin, and Owl made a bitter smile. But Yona, do you know how many houses fell today? Nope. 37 houses got destroyed. This is because you sent those guys to your brother. So you have to write a self-reflection. Alrighty. Yona hummed a tune and jumped down from the rooftop to the balcony. Phew, I stopped her from acting on her own, but can they really hold off one of ours? Even if the executioners killed Dante and Baradin, the Zipfels and Herons wouldn't have a reason to immediately take action against Nameless. Since they were often involved in city destruction, the teens could be blamed for the crimes in the city. However, if the pressure gradually increased, the run candles would take Yona before the situation could escalate. Then, Nameless would either fall or become a follower of a kingdom and lose their sovereignty. Even though Nameless was a great assassin organization, the world powers that lost their successors wouldn't remain still and definitely retaliate. I didn't think the future of Nameless would become this dark. I must see Jean run candle without Yona knowing. Lighting a cigarette, Owl devised his next move. Chapter 147. Accidental Victory 1. Morning of September 8, 1796. The three finished their face-off against the advanced cadets and sought an inn. The strange thing was, after destroying part of the city, they went back to the restaurant and left the gold there. Though the restaurant where they met was half destroyed and burnt to a crisp. Bluerk. Baradin threw up as soon as he relaxed his body. The result of breathing in the fumes the cadets planted in the streets. The magician didn't have such a durable body like Jean or Dante. And even for a magician, Baradin was a little weak. Baradin, are you all right? Here's some water. Take deep breaths. The fumes need to naturally circulate out of your system. Dante pounded his hand on Baradin's back with a worried expression. While he threw up, Baradin constantly cast healing spells on himself, and every time he felt a little better, he flicked up his thumb. I feel like this is a common sight. Those guys are a dynamic duo. They reminded him of Murakan, who chose to fly because he was bored of transfer gates, and Gilly, who had a fear of heights. Jean shook his head. His cold sweat isn't stopping. Jean, is there anything we can do for Baradin? Yeah, Jean. Worry for me. Treating me would be better. Jean stared at Baradin. I never know what he really wants. Apart from Dante, Jean knew that Baradin was doing it on purpose. No matter how weak he was, he could instantly eliminate such poisons with his own recovery spells. What's his intention? Pausing his thought, Jean walked over to Baradin, pulled out some herbs, and began to mince it with his dagger's handle in order to make the antidote he learned from the book. Here. Wow. Receiving the antidote, Baradin happily looked at Jean. His eyes sparkled. He swallowed it whole and nodded in approval. Now I feel more alive. You knew how to make this stuff too. Whoa, you feel better? All thanks to Jean. Fufu. It's the first time I took an antidote from my friend. He really forced the word, friend, into the sentence. Baradin's acting was to simulate friendship. If he hadn't done so, then Jean would always remain distant from him, so it couldn't be helped. Of course, Baradin didn't only think of Jean as a friend. However, he didn't want to miss moments where he wanted to be a little closer to Jean. Get some good rest. There won't be any attacks before the sun sets. How do you know? I'm playing a game with a higher-up of the city. The rule is that there won't be any attacks in the day, but she sends groups in the night. What do you earn if you win? Experience and growth. You came to Samel and risked your life just for that? Why? Can't I? Jean answered calmly. Baradin interjected and Dante clenched his fist thinking, that's the Jean I know. Jean didn't really bet his life. With Quicantel's present, he had a last resort at hand. He also didn't come just for the experience and growth. However, he had no intention of sharing the 1,000-poison antidote with the others, so he didn't need to mention it. Neither was it an item that he was guaranteed to obtain anyway. It's not that I don't like them or anything, but I can't share that. If he acquired anything else, then he could possibly distribute it. Although they tracked him down like stalkers, they joined his cause to fight the cadets on. Just a few gold pieces. No one else in the world could move them with such a small reward. Thanks, guys. On Jin's mindless comment, the two shuddered. Did ya hear that? Did you hear what he just said? The two exchanged glances simultaneously and felt that their visit was worth it. Jin turned around and began to meditate. Once again, I can feel that experience is the most effective way of training. Just fighting cadets for a few days makes me feel close to opening my mind's eye. Use the eye of the mind to observe. Something Jin heard hundreds of times from Luna during his own cadet days. After multiple years since the start of his mind's eye training, Jin's understanding became clearer and clearer. He was desperate, but he wasn't late. Dante would be surprised if he found out that Jin was close to opening his mind's eye. Normally, knights would unlock their mind's eye halfway through their training as a 7-star. Yet that only applied to those with talented senses. Mind's eye was something that knights had to train endlessly even until 8 to 9-star. It was the basic ability and sixth sense of those who fought. Masters or talented knights. Jin slowly approached it before hitting 7-star. His prowess and Luna's training as well as the many life-or-death situations helped him to this point. Life-or-death situations. He said it with such ease, but no one would believe that a 16-year-old 6-star knight survived battles against a herd of Samuel's advanced cadets. Go ahead and sleep. I'll take care of your equipment. Thank you. So cool. The two lay down and began to snore. Their stamina had been depleted from the unexpected battle. Dante is still pretty weak, but he'll get over it. Starting tomorrow, I'll use them and protect them somehow. Using them was simple. The three meshed well with each other, so they easily filled each other's gaps. However, Jin had to consider how to protect them. Elder sister Yona will probably start sending more skillful cadets. We have to prepare for when a real executioner comes. These two are just good at sword skill or magic. They don't have much experience on assassinations. He felt it the past night. The two only survived because they just overpowered the cadets. Once the stronger assassins come, it would be too challenging for them. Pondering for a solution, Jin sensed something approaching. He looked around. Footsteps. The moment he looked forward, a man with a white mask stood in front of him. The leader of Nameless, Owl. However, since he unstrapped his black belt, Jin couldn't identify who he was. Owl just stood and stared at him for a good few seconds. Murderous intent flickered in the leader's eyes for no apparent reason. A glare that could break even stones, trees, and other objects. Jin instantly knew. He knew that this man could target him 100 times and kill him 100 times. Only the most fierce and capable warriors possessed such transcendent glares. He made his footsteps known on purpose, to see if I could detect him. Is he one of the best executioners of Nameless? No. Excluding Yona, an executioner would have no reason to test me. A distant servant greets the 85th leader of Nameless. It looked as if he showed full respect, but Jin was still seated. Owl was a little surprised, but he maintained his stance as he looked down at Jin. Lord Siren recently acquired a gem. Truly someone to talk about marriage with the hidden palace. However, despite knowing it's me, I think it's a little too much to remain seated on such occasions. Jin almost uttered pardon. Like an idiot, it wasn't surprising that the leader of Nameless knew his status. However, marriage talk was not important. First, Jin had to think of why he visited him and what he could earn out of him. I tried to see if the owner of the Pure Whites would take my life. The moment I die, the ones fated with misfortune wouldn't be the run candles anyway. I presume you came to make me take responsibility for the city I destroyed the past few days. You easily knew that I would never kill you. After messing with my land, you are also very blunt. Since you brought up my father's name, I felt great respect and consideration from you. Even though he was a provisional flag bearer, there was no need to mention Siren's name and try to threaten a run candle. Especially for someone who needed to play tug-of-war with the Run Candle clan, Zipfel clan, and Vermont Imperial family. As long as he treats me like Jean Runcandle, it'll be easy to coerce the conversation in a direction that I please. Only disadvantageous if I talk in fear. Although he didn't know the relationship between Yona and the leader of Nameless, he knew the ties between the Runcandle clan and Nameless. Jean planned on using that to gain control of the situation. Fighting sword to sword with him would be impossible, but it'd be different in a game of compromise. Especially in a situation where he felt like the leader of Nameless desperately sought him. Jean never thought Owl confronted him to take responsibility for the city's destruction in the first place. If it were that, then he'd send the strongest assassin, looking away from the fact that Jean was a Runcandle, or call him directly to the Nameless Manor to punish him. However, Owl came to him secretly like a burglar. For what reason did he come so desperately and guarantee that he will not cut my throat? As Owl's harsh glare pressed all over his body, his brain ran and thought of every scenario. If he didn't do so, then the conversation would go into the leader's favor. If it isn't for the demolished city, it must be about elder sister Yona. Jean opened his mouth first. If you have something to say about elder sister Yona, then please tell me anything. Haha. Owl let out a low-pitched laugh. However, it reeked of bloodlust. Jin's senses became hyperactive, reacting even to the slightest bit of dust. Even Lord Siren doesn't toy with the weakness of the Land of White. How dare you, a mere youngest son of Runcandle? HPH. Jean instinctively grabbed his throat. He couldn't breathe at the fighting spirit he felt for the first time. Siren's fighting spirit had a strength that shook the heavens. Talaris's was the essence of bitter frost. And Luna's reminded him that there was nothing in the world that she couldn't cut. Every great being he encountered, they had that kind of fighting spirit. However, Owl's fighting spirit was like a dead night where nothing could be seen. A darkness where it couldn't be differentiated whether one's eyes were closed or open. While his consciousness slowly faded away, Jean thought about his words. Weakness? Elder sister Yona is Nameless weakness. Owl was mistaken. The reason why Jean tore down the city. The reason why he was so blunt. The reason why he had such hubris despite being a child. It was because he knew that Nameless relied on Yona. It won't be too bad if I start threatening instead of compromising. Cough, cough. Jean let out the stifled air and sat straight up. Chapter 148. Accidental Victory, 2. Owl lightened the pressure he placed upon Jean. The bottomless darkness soaked the atmosphere, but Baradin's and Dante's snoring didn't change one bit. Owl already used some needles to paralyze them. Now, instead of his fighting spirit, he could immobilize Jean with just his glare. Jin's body trembled regardless of his resolve, but he didn't feel any fear. He shook because his body couldn't take all of the energy being emitted by Owl. I didn't say it on purpose, but he's furious just because I brought up elder sister Yona's name. It means it's sensitive information, basically resulting in the leader's wrath. In fact, Owl revealed his own weakness. Even now, all he did was glare at Jean, and he didn't look like he was going to take Jin's life. I kinda get it, he concluded his calculations. All thanks to the past few days that Yona presented to him. The leader of Nameless is incredibly strong, but when it comes to assassination skills, elder sister Yona is one level above him based on Nameless principles. When Jean first spent his time in the intermediate cadet's house, Yona observed him in the cramped second floor. For over an hour. Afterwards, she constantly stalked Jean close by, indiscriminate between open or cramped spaces, without being spotted. That was a skill incomparable to assassination, and Jean had been mistaken thinking that he was just weak or Nameless best assassins was a little better. It wasn't that at all. If basic assassination were the goal, the leader of Nameless could take Jin's life without him knowing. However, even the leader couldn't make a feat like Yona had. Not just in Nameless. No one in the entire world could mimic Yona Runcandle's skills. Jean suddenly remembered Luna's words before he became a provisional flag-bearer. Among the siblings, is there anyone you feel a threat from? Nobody for a one-on-one. Maybe Luncia or Deepu's. Or maybe you in the future? However, Yona is really dangerous. Elder sister Yona? Because of poison? No, she's an assassin. Assassins can take anyone's life if they lower their guard. At the time, Jean thought it was just a reminder about the danger of assassins. However, he just realized the hidden meaning behind Luna's words. I wouldn't care if I rip you apart right now, but just to be considerate of Lord Siren, I'll turn a blind eye for you. Owl responded in a soft voice. Jean stood and bowed. He mentioned father because he had a reason to guarantee that he'll never kill me, even if I slander elder sister Yona. Jean liked the fact that there was less of a reason to die at Owl's hand. Moreover, he became more certain that the leader came to save him. The leader of Nameless came so he could save me from my sister. The deaths of Dante and Baradin from Yona's horseplay would be problematic for the leader. Jean willed down his smirk. He liked his ability and position to throw threats, but a weakness was more effective when it was held in hand than shaking it provokingly, with the attitude that he could squeeze and make it explode whenever he wanted. Unfortunately for him, he caught another weakness aside from Yona, Baradin and Dante. I apologize. I was naive and provoked you. I will receive any punishment. You thought I wouldn't know? With an expression that tells me that you know why I'm here. No matter how courageous you are, that demeanor is impossible unless you are certain of your survival. That was Nameless. Leader. Jin's mask became useless, but he didn't really care. Exaggerated respect and etiquette would be futile against these types of people. It was a poor choice of words that disrespected you. I don't want to make such mistakes twice. I'm certain that you have come for Dante and Baradin who are lying over there. Correct. Killing you, a provisional flag bearer, wouldn't be much of a problem, but they're a different story. If you obey my words well, then I'll dismiss your mockery from before. I'll also forget about your relationship with those two. I'm listening. The leader alleviated his anger and lit a cigar. Starting tonight, instead of cadets, white-masked executioners will come for you. You three must stick together and make sure to seek the town square while escaping. Hearing the orders, Jean extrapolated that the leader could no longer control Yona. If the leader wanted to save Dante and Baradin, then he just had to exclude them from being targets. However, he chose to come to Jean and offered him advice instead. May I ask why? You still have the courage to scorn me? No, sir. I will do as you say. And when the day after tomorrow comes, make sure to escort the two successors out of the city. At all costs. If they do not listen, take them down and throw them out. So I should be alone. You understood well. The executioners will come thrice. Owl's simulation went like this. Since Yona had 3 opportunities, he would help the teens for the first 2 times, but the final time would be to not raise suspicion. If Yona found out, Nameless would be flipped inside out. So if Dante and Baradin ran away, she would forget about them. Since the one most important to Yona, Jean, remained in the city until the last day of the challenge. Yona will send an intermediate, advanced, then a master executioner, since she intends to help her brother's growth instead of killing Baradin and Dante. The 3 could never survive a master executioner. Neither would Jean alone. If Dante and Baradin leave, it doesn't matter if Jean lives or not. Well, it'd be nice if he survives and makes Yona happy, but that's too much to ask. It was still possible that Yona would step in and save Jean before the master executioner kills him. Owl honestly thought that was the only way. Organizing his thoughts, the leader rubbed the light of his cigar on his finger. Sir, speak. You have just told me to face death. Since you told me to survive where it'd be challenging even with my companions. So you are saying that you can't do it? No, sir. However, I believe that I should also have a reward for risking my life. At least, in the case where I successfully execute your orders. Owl nodded. All right, I'll heed your request. What do you want? The 1,000 poison antidote. You crazy bastard. Is that not possible? Unable to express Jin's shamelessness in words, Owl burst into laughter. That wouldn't be possible, even for Lord Siren. Maybe that was too far. I was going to get it through elder sister Yona anyway, but if the leader were to give it to me directly, it'll be guaranteed. And I won't need to deal with him if I get it from my sister. But now that I think about it, it's too far-fetched. Knowing that his request had been rejected, Jean wasn't too disappointed. It was just a crazy thought that was worth a try. Request something else. If you speak more nonsense, I won't give you more opportunities to speak. Jean enunciated what he wanted, syllable by syllable, and Owl's eyes widened. All right, you can request that in exchange for risking your life. However, you must keep the two successors alive. Owl would fulfill Jin's request only if Jean satisfied his conditions and survived. Thank you for understanding. I will keep your promise. Jean internally screamed in happiness. The moment the leader accepted the deal, Jean deduced that he was unstoppable in Samel. About to leave the inn, the leader glanced back at Jean. And let me offer you some words of wisdom. I will listen with gratitude. There's only a few who we can't kill with ease, but we do not senselessly kill everyone. Do you know why that is? Having already decoded Owl's intention, Jean looked up at him. Owl was gently scolding him, who toyed with the leader of Nameless. Because a weapon that could fatally wound a man is more frightening when held in hand. And wielding such a weapon without care could result in a commotion. And Jean was dropping more hints to the leader whom he owed. Ha! Then why did you? Owl halted mid-sentence and stopped in his tracks. He shook his head. Wait, Jean Runcandle, that kid, did he not know that Yona was our weakness? Since I didn't ask about the city's destruction first, he already predicted that our meeting was about Yona. He remembered his expressive self that overreacted when Yona's name was mentioned, and for the first time in a while he felt embarrassed. A feeling of shame and failure washed over him. He lost to a child in a game. The ruler of the city, the man deemed as the king of assassins. I can't even look at him anymore. Shit, I'm an embarrassment. Even if he's a pureblood, he's last in line and only a provisional flag bearer. Of course he doesn't know a lot about Yona. Jean sarcastically bowed and hid his smile. Terrific. Owl's short, deep compliment echoed in the room, and the moment he stepped out of the inn, he disappeared. As he returned to his chamber, the leader felt disappointed. The youngest son of the Runcandle clan was fated to die at the hands of Yona's master executioner. Baradin and Dante's paralysis disappeared, and they couldn't even conceive what happened while they were asleep. ***** Translator. J. Proofreader. Yukidokata *****. Even the Lord couldn't have known that the provisional flag-bearer was friends with the successors of the Zipfels and Herons. We've obtained some interesting information we can report. There's also something between Yona and the provisional flag-bearer. Since we witnessed the situation, the evidence will soon start pouring in. A group of men were having a discussion. They were in an advanced cadet's home. The house owners had a chain around their throat, suffocated to death. The group were Joshua's henchmen. We aren't done just because we got some information. And since the level of the assassins after the youngest son's head is increasing, watch very closely. Don't forget that he can't die yet. However, they forgot that Nameless best executioner resided in the building across them. The executioner had been stalking them since they came into the city, watching them every single moment. Chapter 149, 2 Long Nights, 1 Short Night 1. The first batch sent to the 3 teens were advanced executioners. The progression from intermediate, advanced to master executioner, as predicted by the leader of Nameless, was horribly wrong. Atop a tower, the leader and Yona watched the 3 get chased around the city. Yona, are you all right with this? You sent advanced ones from the start. Your brother might actually die. Is that what you want? Jin's super strong. I know his achievements are unbelievable for his age. However, that is different from... And the fake friends stuck to him need to die as well. If they don't die, we decided that I would give them personal training. Owl gripped his forehead. Amongst the assassins of Nameless, Yona's training was the most terrifying and painful. Then they would attack with all they've got. I wonder if Jean and the others can take them to the town square. He sighed. Whether they died or not, Yona watched them with flaming eyes, especially Baradin and Dante. Then, she gave a short giggle before continuing to glare down at the chase. Yuaea. This doesn't really compensate for the food Jean paid for. There seems to be no end to them. And how is this an assassination? This is a hunt. Isn't this Samuel? Why are those bastards just chasing us in public? Isn't it an assassination as long as there are no witnesses? There hasn't been a person in sight. It's as if the entire city is after our heads. The three rushed through the streets like mad bulls. The assassins right behind them wore white masks, signifying that they were ranked nameless executioners. Why are you so heavy for someone who looks light? Jean had Baradin in a fireman's carry. The magician would never be able to outrun the assassins. Sorry, I have a lot of stuff in my bag. Shouting those words, Baradin lifted his wand and began to cast a spell. Giant's Hand, 6-star earth spell. As soon as he finished casting, the mana from the wand soaked the ground. The rocks and dirt formed a massive hand and blocked the path behind them. Among the 10 assassins, 5 were obstructed by the hand. Crash! However, the hand that smashed the ground didn't harm a single one. Swoosh! Swoosh! The executioners hopped like crickets onto the rooftops to evade the spell, and threw daggers towards the three. It looked as if they were only lightly flung, yet the blades pierced through all surfaces, gates, bricks, and pavement. A true display of an executioner's throwing dagger. Holy shit! The daggers melt through everything. Watching the attacks unfold, Baradin screamed, and goosebumps stretched across his body. Dante quickly glanced at the poison incomparable to any other. He gulped. Thud, 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 thud. Jean and Dante's footsteps quickened. Soon after, they were confronted by a dead end where 2 buildings met. Dante, break through. I got you back. Understood. And dodge immediately. There has to be a trap. Creak. PSSSHHHT. The sound of sword clashing bricks occurred with the sound of activated traps. However, the traps behind the wall were not darts, daggers, or arrows. It was the hooks that ripped Jin's robes. Oh! Living up to his name as the prospective successor of the Hyran clan, Dante swung his sword to cut through the chains of 2 hooks. Sparks flew everywhere. However, the chains did not disconnect and instead curved towards Dante along with the 3 other grapples. Not even a second later, Jean clenched his teeth and threw himself towards Dante. Ting! Ting! If it weren't for Baradin on his shoulders, he would have deflected all 3 grapples. Even after Jin's feat, 1 grapple went from Dante's throat. However, he wasn't just anyone who overcame the generation above him to become the prospective successor. In that short moment, Dante copied Jean and stabbed the grapples. I dodged an injury, thank you. Jean forgot that he told Dante about the grapples. Before Jean could respond, the assassins behind them threw more projectiles. However, they didn't know that Jean led them to a dead end on purpose. I was so surprised when I checked my pockets after the leader left. A map. The leader not only had a conversation with Jean, but also put a map in his pocket. One that showed the path to safely evade the executioners. A path that intentionally led towards a dead end with a path straight to the square behind it. Towards their destination without Yona's suspicion. Behind the remnants of the wall, they saw the pathway straight to an open area. And in this main street, there wasn't a low building, wall, or sewer where an assassin could hide. Almost like a pilgrimage route for the priests of the Holy Kingdom of Vankella, the road was wide and clean. Essentially, no matter how ghost-like the executioners were, assassination attempts were impossible. Unless they were as good as Yona. Completely open terrain. We should lure them there and fight them off. Affirmative, we won't need to run away over there. They're all dead now. The 2 grinded their teeth. However, Jean thought differently. It's still a road, not the central square. There must be a reason why the leader told us to go there. Even though the 3 were very talented, Jean could still not use magic or spiritual energy, and their opponents were 10 advanced executioners. On top of that, they were the ones handpicked by Yona. It won't be too bad to fight these guys. See their capabilities firsthand. Just because he thought differently didn't mean that he didn't want to fight. It was an opportunity to check Baradin and Dante's improvement and return the favor to the assassins who treated them like hunting game. Baradin. Yeah. We'll protect you. So cast one of your strongest light spells. Bonus points if you wipe them all out at once. Clang. Clink clang. Dante and Jean deflected the projectiles and entered the main street. Just give me 10 minutes. I know a perfect spell for this. What is it? The executioners ran around Jean and surrounded the three teens. Ring of Erupting Flames Massacre by the Emperor of Magic First Form. Whoa! The name is astounding. Jean almost stopped in his tracks when he heard Baradin's reply. He learned that. Dante just thought that the name was obnoxiously long. He didn't know about it at all. Of course he wouldn't. Only a small number of magicians knew of it. 200 years ago, the Zipfel patriarch Lyell Zipfel, who was called the Emperor of Magic, used it once. Yet, in the long history of magic, his life and achievements filled multiple pages. Jean had seen his past life's master cast an incomplete version. And Jean knew where the tome for its final form existed. Here they come. Jean regained his composure as the executioners charged in. Just because they were assassins didn't mean that they were only trained for assassination. They were all at least 6-star warriors, and the leader had to be at least 7-star. Cackling. Clang. The two swords clashed with 10 others. Jean stuck right next to Baradin's barriers and guarded him, and Dante lured the others into the open area. 7 on Dante, 3 on Jean and Baradin. The executioners planned on dealing with Dante first before moving on to Jean and Baradin. However, Dante didn't seem to be pushed back at all by the 7 warriors. A blue aura whirled and whipped around him, indicating Heron's decisive killing move. I heard that he shut himself in for training. Did he finally master that? Every time a blade entered the gaps between the rings of aura, sparks flew. The bright blue rings blocked the blades like armor. The move was called Imperial Blade, Dragon Blade Armor. Just a barrier in an abnormal form. Every time the armor received an impact, the aura belt would absorb it and return it to the opponent. So, no matter what direction, if the attack wasn't enough to pierce the armor, the attacker would take damage. Kurg! 2 assassins fell backwards with their shoulders and thighs stabbed. The others gripped their swords and swung sparingly. Jean was kind of proud of his friends. A barrier that counterattacks. I should be careful of that move. And is Baradin actually casting that spell? The amount of mana gathered in. That barrier is a little disquieting. Compared to Dante, Jean made light footsteps while pressing onto the 3 executioners. There was the mid-level 7-star, but he was also being pushed back. Even though Jin's aura was only 6-star. As expected, my body is waking up. The blessed body of a run candle. Every time he swung, his body's immense power supported his lacking aura, which made his progress possible. A strength that truly marked the best clan of swordmasters in history. Clang. Jean swung with all his might, and the executioner's sword snapped. Even the squad leader was surprised and put some distance. Behind the mask, the executioner's eyes quivered. Fighting isn't your main profession anyways. Don't be too sad. Just as he was about to smirk, Jean! Dante desperately called for Jean. His dragon blade armor clearly diminished. His stamina was wavering. They had been running from the pursuers since the evening, and he used his decisive killing move for the victory. This idiot should have rationed his energy while fighting. It wasn't that Dante didn't control his stamina. He decided that everything would be alright even if he went too far since Jean was there, the warrior he trusted the most. The same applied for Baradin. The magician nodded to Jean to signal that the spell was complete and that he could go help Dante. As soon as Jean bolted away, the squad leader swung at Baradin's barrier, and it shattered like glass. Jean cleared the attackers on Dante. Fosh! Flames erupted from the cracks of the barrier. Chapter 150. 2 long nights, 1 short night 2. Bong. Pop plop pop. The problem was that the flames from the spell were pathetic compared to its grand name. The first flames were almost fierce, but it instantly dissolved in the air. Then, small bubbles of flame just floated about. Huh! What? Those reactions didn't come from Jean and Dante. It was from the executioners who, until now, hadn't shown a single bit of emotion even when Jean pressed the attack as a 6-star or when Dante used his decisive killing move. The outcome was so disappointing that the executioners, who had emotion training, gave a reaction. They expected some terrifying spell since 2 of them were guarding the magician with their life. Pop plop, plop pop pop, psssshsshh. These cute flames extinguished. Like snow melting in water, the flames disappeared in thin air. The heat probably couldn't even melt a candle. Shit. A short silence befell them. However, it was enough time for Dante and Jean to shame and blame Baradin for the embarrassing spectacle. Baradin's thick skin was gone as well. His ears turned bright red. I know that it wouldn't be at full power, but this is kinda harsh. If one didn't retain an extremely unique talent, not even a 10-star or Genesis Knight could completely cast this pretentious spell. However, since Baradin was a pureblood Zipful, they expected at least 10% of the spell's effect. You done. The leader spoke for the first time, suppressing his disappointment. The other executioners laughed silently and exchanged glances with one another. As much as they were humans, they wanted to return the ineffable humiliation as their fighting skills were ridiculed by Jean. And the executioners were embarrassed that they couldn't take down some kids. It would be news that would put Nameless to shame. However, the squad leader wasn't a person who would make the same mistake twice. That black-haired kid probably has something up his sleeve. It can be a variable in close combat, so we'll finish them off with projectiles before they can get there. He signaled the others, and the assassins surrounded Jean, even the ones that were injured by Dante. If they couldn't continue their mission despite their injuries, they wouldn't be ranked as advanced executioners. Jean quickly examined Dante and Baradin. Dante's stamina's depleted. Dante's heavy breaths proved Jin's point. There was no need to ask. And Baradin, this fucking bastard, he's already showing the early stages of overflow. A river of blood flowed out of Baradin's nose as he writhed in embarrassment. He was suffering from mana overflow after failing to cast the extravagant spell. However, Jean was relieved to see the unicorn's horn that peeked out of the heavy backpack. Regardless, they needed at least an hour for the mana overflow symptoms to recede. Essentially, the two were incapable of battle. It's been a while since I last cast it, so I may have messed up the chant. It's really complicated. Cough, cough. Baradin spat excuses with his croaky voice, and Dante consoled him. As for Jean, he felt like his insides were going to explode. I guess it's my fault. I shouldn't have let them fight in the first place. However, they weren't done for just yet. Dante, take Baradin and run. I'll take down these guys and follow you. Will you be okay on your own? Yeah, I'm fine. But you guys might die if you don't run like your life depended on it. Understanding Jin's words, Baradin and Dante sighed. In open terrain, Jean would never take damage from the enemy. As long as they didn't all run in at once, Jean held an advantage. He just needed to deflect all weapons from all directions. And since it would quickly become a chase anyway, there was no chance of them getting surrounded again. They were able to get to their destination because they could outrun them in the first place. Pray that I can parry all of their attacks and run, Jean shouted as he swung his sword at the enemy. Blue blade crescents flew towards their formation, and the executioners temporarily scattered. At the same time, Dante picked up Baradin and sprinted away. If even one dagger were to fly past Jean and hit either of the two, the Zipfuls or Herons would lose an heir. That would honestly be favorable for Jean, who would become a future patriarch. However, Jean chose loyalty over a favorable future. He didn't want them to die as of the moment. If I somehow protect them until they get into the town square, then we'll all survive. There was a reason for the leader's advice. Jean had faith in his words. Ka-aza. Dante ran while screaming his lungs out, and the flurry of daggers continued. Clang, clank, ting. Jean followed right behind them and parried each and every flying dagger. If it were a month ago, he wouldn't know if his feat was possible. Jean definitely became aware that he improved a lot recently. My mind's eye is almost open. He thought back to his Clearstone training with the Tawna twins in the secret training room for the intermediate class, where steel marbles flew everywhere because of the Tonus mistake. He recalled the weird sensation that he felt back then. Whether a steel marble flew near or towards him, the trajectories that became visible in his head. All the suffering I went through in this city wasn't for nothing. I guess this is thanks to elder sister Yona. He didn't even obtain the 1,000 poison antidote, but since he almost died multiple times, he was thankful for the fruits of his labor. I will survive until the day after tomorrow and receive the potion from my sister, then make the leader keep his promise. Of course, he didn't forget to keep Dante and Baradin safe. ***** Translator. J. Proofreader. Yukid Okada ****. 2 long nights had passed. On the second day, the chase progressed the same as the previous. Although there were 20 assassins instead of the previous 10, it was easier than the day before. It was thanks to them abstaining from fighting as soon as they found the road to the town square. I didn't know they'd stop attacking as soon as we got through that road. It's a weird yet cool tradition. If it weren't for that tradition, us too. 3 would have died. Baradin, the center of Samel City. That was the special area where nameless high-ranked executioners' families resided. Nameless executioners never unsheathed their blades at that location unless it was an emergency or there was an invasion. Hence, it was the only peaceful area in Samel. A tradition that even Quicantle didn't know of. It was an unspoken rule established after her prime. What do you mean by that, Baradin? We said we'd call him Lord Holocaust Fire Bubble of the Emperor First Form. Stop teasing. People can make mistakes. People can tease others. Jean smirked, and Dante coughed awkwardly. Ehem. Anyways, I think escaping to the town square would have a limit. When does the game with the higher-ups end? I don't think this deal will just end with us cheating our way out. But I'm also curious about this higher-up that you know. The two looked at Jean with sparkling eyes. Clearly, they wanted to know more about the deal he made. It wasn't a deal, but more so an order. Jean looked away. As promised to the leader, I have to send these guys out before the evening. And when the day after tomorrow comes, make sure to escort the 2 successors out of the city. At all costs. If they do not listen, take them down and throw them out. Thanks to Owl's map, they were able to progress throughout the challenge. And that was pretty incredible. Although they cheated a little, no one would believe that these 3 young adults survived dozens of advanced executioners for 2 days. However, the 3 would never be able to survive the incoming wave. Tonight, the best of the best will come. And the leader will not appreciate these 2 who are still here. Jean didn't want to send them out. Today's the last day. You 2 should sleep well for the evening. Whoa, it means we'll suffer one last time. If you gain something from winning, you have to share it with us. You'll share it, right? Just like the time at the arena. Sure. I'll give you a souvenir. Jean swallowed his follow-up and smiled. ****. Owl. Please answer my question truthfully. Yona. What is it that you want to ask? You helped them. Owl hid his surprise and tilted his head, feigning innocence. What do you mean? It makes no sense. How did Jean and the 2 weirdos go to the nonviolence zone twice in a row? This must be your... Haha. It can't be. It's obvious that you're lying, Yona spoke while giggling, and goosebumps climbed up Owl's back. Ahem. Anyways, did you write the self-reflection on the destruction? Heh. Since you broke your promise first, I'm taking action. You do not trust me? Nope. And starting today, you'll stick right next to me since you might help them again. Ho ho. It was a dejected laughter, but Owl wanted it this way in the first place. That obedient kid will send them off. And Yona going after him is better than some other executioner. Since she likes Jean, she might show mercy. However, he couldn't be certain. Yona's personality reeked of chaos, so she could choose to kill her loving brother anytime. It's dinner time soon. Time to kill some children. Will you come with me? I shall. He. They silently went towards the inn where Jin's party resided. They took position on a rooftop across the inn. Owl felt soreness on the back of his neck and experienced light suffocation. Why are those three still together? He could see clearly across the window without curtains. The three were together. In fact, Jean was awake, and Baradin and Dante were fast asleep. Why, Yona? They're gathered nicely before their death. Just wait a moment. Ha! Their eyes widened. They saw the object in Jin's hand, the present that Quicantle gave. And surprisingly, Jean clearly displayed it in Yona's and Owl's view. Yona glared at Owl. Your title is the leader of Nameless, and yet you gave him that. To save them? And no, I really didn't. Yona! Cold sweat drenched Owl's face.